thank you for the invitation to come and preach God's Word. I also want to say before I begin preaching that I commend you highly for the goodbye that you gave to Kim, and I'm not sure I know his wife's name. Janet? Is that it? It was a great tribute. We happened to sneak in here for part of it, sat in the back, so maybe you didn't notice that we were here. You were paying attention to him, which you should have been doing for sure. But I know he was blessed. I know he was blessed. I even saw tears come in his eye at one point. And when you sang that song or had it played, thank you for giving to the Lord, brought back memories to me because they played that for me one time when I was moving from one ministry to another. So it was very touching, very touching. I want to try to limber up your minds a little bit. Are you used to thinking during the sermon? Or you have this bad habit of turning your brain off for a few minutes and getting a little rest? I want to try to limber you up a little bit. So I want to start off with a little bit of an exercise here. I want to give you the first part of a well-known saying. And I want someone to volunteer to complete that statement. And if you can, tell me who originally made that statement. Okay? So, the first one is too easy. Ask not what your country can do for you. Who can complete that? Ask what you can do for your country, and who said that? JFK. Oh, you're sharp. Still awake, too. I'm glad for that. I shot an arrow into the air. Almost perfect. It fell to earth. I knew not where. Who said that? What? No, not Mark Twain. He's a little more down to earth than that. Anybody know for sure? Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Poetic. Okay, I have to give you a little bit of a clue here on this one, but I don't think you would get it otherwise. This is from the world of sports. It's the only clue I'm going to give you. When you come to a fork in the road, what'd you say, David? Take it. That's it. That's it. When you come to a fork in the road, take it. And he is a lot like the guy who originally said it. Who was it? Yogi Berra. Okay, one last, next to last. The empty vessel makes. The empty vessel makes.
A great container.
A good place for soup. All kinds of things. The empty vessel makes the loudest sound. Shakespeare. Mr. Williams. Okay, one more of my own making. You've never heard this before, but it is destined for greatness. I guarantee you that. Destined for greatness. If you don't like change, then you're not going to like what Jesus taught. And that's my sermon. If you don't like change, then you're not going to like what Jesus taught, because Jesus taught us about change, as you can well see. Do you realize that the Jewish authorities lobbied for Jesus' execution because he was teaching that the system of religion that they had developed needed to be changed from the inside? They wanted him dead because of this idea that things needed to change. And one of Jesus' most powerful teachings about the need to change came about as a result of an argument that developed among his disciples. If you want to turn to Mark chapter 9, you can go ahead and turn there. I'm going to read that in just a moment. But an argument brought about this teaching about change. Now, have you ever been involved in an argument? Let me see a show of hands if you've ever been involved in an argument.
I'm married.
If you didn't raise your hand, you're not telling the truth. What's always at the center? Always at the center of every argument, regardless what the subject might be. What is it?
Eye trouble.
What?
Eye trouble.
Eye trouble. Yes. Okay, I get it. It takes me a while sometimes. That's exactly right. Everybody involved in an argument thinks they are right. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an argument, would there? Everyone involved thinks, I have the right idea. I am right. My way's the best. You need to listen to me. That's the basis of every argument that ever exists. So as you'll see in the scripture text, the disciples were arguing among themselves about who should be the boss after Jesus is gone. Now that's just interesting in and of itself, isn't it? Jesus tells them he's going to die someday relatively soon, and they start arguing about who can take over. It ought to be me, no, it ought to be me, no, it ought to be me, on and on and on. It sounds like a debate between 12 presidential candidates from 12 different parties. It ought to be me, it ought to be me, 12 times over. However, Jesus got in on the discussion. That changed everything. There's that word. And Jack, where did Jack go? The passage he read had the word change in it twice. I noticed that. You probably didn't. We will all be changed. Yeah. And there's just something about this idea of change that we don't like. We like comfort. We like things to go along the way they've always been, don't we? Yeah. There's some comfort. Some security in that. Change just kind of sets us on edge. But Jesus pointed out to his disciples, and that's all of his disciples, not just 12, but us too. He pointed out that change is absolutely necessary to participate in his kingdom. And I assume, because you're here today, that you want to participate or are participating in his kingdom. So let's hear the words of Jesus. The first few words here are not his directly, but we're going to start at verse 30 in Mark chapter 9. They left that place and passed through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were, because he was teaching his disciples. He said to them, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise. But they did not understand what he meant, and were afraid to ask him about it. I think that's pretty interesting right there. They were afraid to ask him about it. They came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, what were you arguing about on the road? But they kept quiet, because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, if anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and the servant of all. He took a little child and had him stand among them. Taking him in his arms, Jesus said to them, whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. Hear the words of Jesus. Jesus says that to be his disciples, we need, first of all, the right focus. Let me put it in the form of a question. Are you looking inward or upward? Are you looking inward or upward? You see, Jesus had been telling his disciples about what was going to come. He wanted to prepare them emotionally and spiritually for a very terrible event that's going to happen in the very near future. He'd been telling them about his approaching death and resurrection. But they did not understand, it says in verse 32. They did not understand. Their minds zeroed in on one part of that statement, that Jesus was going to die. And so, because they knew with Jesus gone that there's going to be a serious leadership vacuum if their group is to hold together, somebody has to rise to the top. Somebody has to be the leader. And so each of these 12 men begins thinking about himself as that leader. Maybe I could do it. I think I'd be better than him. And that other guy down the line too. Why? I'm the best of them all. I have all the characteristic traits. I have all the leadership ability that would be needed. I'm the one. It should be me. And the next guy thinks the same thing. It should be me. And they're all 12 thinking that, and soon all this dreaming of prominence comes out and it escalates into this argument among these 12 guys. I don't know how in the world, being the 12 disciples that they were, and knowing Jesus as much as they didn't know him thoroughly at this point, but as much as they did at this time, how did they think they could keep that away from Jesus? How did they think they could keep him from knowing they were arguing? They're all traveling down the road together. Maybe Jesus is a few feet ahead, but if he's 10 miles ahead, he's going to know. They're arguing, trying to keep it among themselves, away from Jesus. And then they get into this house, and Jesus says, hey guys, what was the argument about? And they go deathly silent. Caught. Did he hear every word I said? Did he hear what that guy said, that guy said, that guy said? Did he hear all of that? Does he even know what we're thinking? Beyond what we're saying? They were caught. Caught red-handed with that one question. What were you arguing about? Jesus exposed an issue that called for radical change in all 12 of them and all 12 of us. I'm a bad mathematician. The disciples must have been a little bit embarrassed by this. They must have been. Because they were caught with their attitudes showing. And you know as well as I do, these were not very good attitudes. Trying to step all over each other and get to the top. They wanted power. They wanted importance. They wanted prominence. They did not have the right focus because they were each looking inward, not upward. Every one of them was hoping for a promotion. And not a one of them was thinking about God's kingdom or God's glory. They didn't have the right focus. So here's the challenge that brings to your life and mine. When one or more people try to take over, it inevitably damages relationships between believers. Here we have 12 guys who are arguing. Did that help their relationship? Did that bond them together in a deeper kind of love? No. When you have an argument, after that time, you have to mend the relationship. Something's torn apart. When somebody tries to take over, it inevitably destroys relationships or does some damage to the relationship. And it robs the church of God's grace, of God's love. It leads sometimes to a bitter loss of goodwill or trust. In essence, Jesus said, if you have the wrong focus, then it's obvious that all you're thinking about is you. All you're thinking about is your opinion. It's not about getting your way. It's not about your idea being the best or about one person having more influence than another. It's never about that. It should be about focusing on God, on what He wants, on how good He is, not about how good I am or you are or who should be in control. It should be about God. To be Jesus' disciples, we need to have the right focus. Also, to be His disciples, we need the right goals. Jesus spoke very plainly when He described this to His disciples, and this is my version of Jesus' words here. He said, here's the way God sees things. Well, they hadn't been thinking about that, had they? Here's the way God sees things. If you want to really be something in God's eyes, then learn to serve the needs of other people before you take care of yourself. You see, they had that reversed. They had that upside down, inside out. If you really want to be something in God's eyes, then learn to serve the needs of other people before you take care of yourself. Now, you know, as well as I do probably, that is without a doubt one of the hardest things to do that Jesus ever taught us to do. Put other people first. It's just not normal. It is not normal. It's not natural to put others ahead of ourselves. It's one of the hardest challenges we have in the faith, putting others ahead of ourselves. The world teaches us. The world teaches us to be self-centered, to be self-promoting, to be self-protective. The world teaches that. And it's hard for us to hear the wisdom of Jesus when He says, put that behind you, I got another way of thinking that I want to embed in your heart if you're going to follow me. You see, in the philosophy of the unredeemed world, putting others ahead of yourself is a certain path to the misery of last place. How many want to be in last place? No hands are raised. We're taught to be in first place. Do the best you can. Do better than others. Rise to the top. Climb the ladder of success. On and on and on. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. We have so many ways of saying it. We're taught that by the world. Jesus laid a tough challenge before us in this teaching. A really tough challenge. He's basically saying, are you working for yourself or are you working for God? Are you working for yourself or are you working for other people who need a touch of ministry or service? See, that's a question we don't want to hear. We don't want to hear it. Because we don't want to come face to face with our self-centeredness. We don't want to admit that we're not living up to the teachings of Jesus. We don't want to be told to be better servants to others because we care most about getting our own needs met. And maybe if there's any excess time, excess resources, then maybe we can help a little. That's why those words of Jesus have that haunting ring that never goes away. Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last. and the servant of all. It points out all too clearly that our goals are often not the right goals. And even when we do serve others, even when we do kind of get it right, we sort of want to be patted on the back, don't we? We sort of want to be noticed that we did something good, that we helped someone else, that we gave of ourselves for the betterment of someone or something else. I want you to try to picture something. I don't know if you can or not. Because we're so immersed in this world, I don't know if anybody can really picture this in a pure way. But just try to picture in your mind how refreshing it would be to be surrounded with people who always put others' needs ahead of their own. At work, in your neighborhood, in your church, whatever you want to imagine here, whatever group of people that you want to imagine, just try to imagine yourself being totally surrounded with everyone who always puts someone else first before themselves. You think that'd be a comfortable situation? I think I'd like that. I think I would like that. Try to imagine a church where absolutely every member, everyone who goes there, is the focus of everyone else. Everyone cares about everyone. Everyone takes care of everyone. Everyone helps everyone. Prays for everyone. Loves everyone. Imagine a church like that. Well, guess what? That's exactly the way God wants it to be. And we don't have to just imagine it. We can create it. He gave us the power to create that in the Holy Spirit. He gave us the challenge to create that. You. I know about 6 names here. Okay? So one of these is yours. You're either David or Jack or Dick or Roy or Judy. Bernie's not here, is she, today? I know a few names here. You, whatever your name is, you are instrumental in creating that atmosphere of everybody serving everybody in this church. That's your job. My job or someone else's job may be to preach or to do something else. But your job is to serve others before you serve yourself. Your job. Whoever you are. Wherever you come from. Number 3, Jesus says to be his disciple, we need the right focus, the right goals, and the right motivation. So to emphasize what he was trying to get across, Jesus finds this little child, this little boy, young lad. And he called him over, and Jesus took that young lad in his arms. Now, you have to understand the societal implications of this, because as it is today in many societies, not ours necessarily, but in many societies or cultures, the Jewish people devalued the importance of a child. Children are powerless. Children cannot return a favor. Children cannot give your reputation a boost. They just don't have much to give, at least of the things that we adults are looking for. Children hardly ever say, hey, that was a great meal, Mom. Great job changing the tire, Dad. They just don't think that way. And so they don't build up our egos. And you never ask a child for a comment on your resume. Can I use you, little 10-year-old boy, as a reference? I'm applying for this job. You never do that. Because they can't do anything for you. At least, not what other people can do for you. So to befriend a child in that day and age, and in a lot of situations today, to befriend a child was seen as wasted effort. They have nothing to give. At least nothing that I want them to give. A child can promise no tangible reward. So Jesus said, I want you to welcome a little child. Welcome a child. Because when you welcome a child, it's like welcoming me, Jesus. It's the same thing, he said. When you welcome a little child, you're welcoming me into your life. Now, the 12 disciples are having this argument, or just had this argument. They all wanted to be at the top, and not a one of them would have ever thought about going over to the same little boy that Jesus took in his arms and saying, Johnny, I really love you. I want to be your partner. I want to be your friend. I want to help you. I want to be your big brother. Not a one of those disciples would have done that. Why? Because that would have been lowering himself to Johnny's level when everybody else is trying to raise themselves up to leadership in this group. That wouldn't have fit with their argument, would it? It wouldn't have gone along with anybody's goals to welcome or love or pay attention to this little child. They wouldn't have stooped that low to pay attention to a nobody as they saw it. They would have considered that to be detrimental to their goal of rising to the top of leadership. And that, you see, is exactly why this spiritual ideal that Jesus sets before us is so very difficult to practice. We want to give our time, we want to give our attention to people who can reciprocate a favor. We want to give ourselves to people who will make us look good in return. We want to receive a compliment. We want tit for tat. And so we typically, almost inherently, only pay attention to the people who can give back to us in one way or another. And that all forces us to consider whether or not we have the right motivation in our day-to-day activities. Jesus wants us to be willing to reach out, to minister to all people, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they fit in society. He just wants us to be available, to care about everybody that comes into our lives. That might be a person with needs. That might be someone that we can bless, that he can bless through us. Jesus wants our hearts to be caring and sensitive toward everyone around us, even those who can return no favors. So these spiritual directives, that Jesus wants us to have the right focus, he wants us to have the right goals, he wants us to have the right motivation. Those directives are difficult to practice. Why? Because they require a change of heart from the way we tend to want to live our lives. But if you develop those qualities, those spiritual qualities, then we will also develop the kind of greatness that God recognizes and values. The church is all about change. Changing us from worldly-minded beings into caring, godly workers in the kingdom of heaven. As Yogi Berra might put it, you now stand at a fork in the road. Take it. Take it. Our decision song today is Jesus Calls Us. Yes, He does. Yes, He does. He calls us out of this world. He calls us to change. But if you've never become a Christian, would you accept the challenge? The challenge to be changed by Jesus into something you could never be. A level you could never reach.